Hello. Damien, you are still muted, but we are here. Hello, I'm Kevin.
I'm Damien. Nice
Yeah,
to meet you.
and for the next hour and a half, we're going to be trying to get things to work, maybe successfully. We'll see. We'll talk about the project in just a moment, but I actually thought some more thorough introductions might be in order. Damien, would you like to tell us who you are and who you work for?
Yeah, I'm Damien Murphy, an applied engineer here at Deepgram. So, working with customers, building, real-time, low latency voice bots and transcribing their audio.
Yeah, excellent. And I am very fond of Deepgram, so I'm really excited and thankful that you're joining us for the next little bit. My name's Kevin. I work on the Directus core team, and in this workshop, or rather, this workshop is part of Leap Week. Hopefully, you are already aware, but Leap Week is our week of announcements where we announce new features and also run a series of other events to celebrate Directus and our community. We're starting to near the end of the week now, but don't worry, there's still lots more to come. Tomorrow, we are doing a community networking social, and right now, right here, we're going to be building some cool stuff with Directus and Deepgram. Maybe if we take a moment to talk about the project, that would be a cool way to start. So podcasts. I love podcasts. Podcasts are actually all a standard. Podcasts are just an RSS feed that contains some metadata and links to episodes. And in this workshop, we're going to string together using Directus Automate and Flows, our kind of visual automation tool, a semi-complex automation where we are going to go grab a RSS feed of a podcast, go grab the latest episode, send it off to Deepgram's transcription service. So maybe before I jump straight into the whole project, maybe we break down each part. Could you tell us a little bit about Deepgram's transcription service?
Yeah, so we're able to process, audio, video, pretty much any format, and turn that into text, right? So we'll basically transcribe every bit of speech that's spoken, and then give you back a word level and timestamp level, what was spoken. We also have multiple other APIs, which we'll get into a little bit later, but.
I mean, we can rock on now. So we're going to go and transcribe these podcasts. I listened to one the other day that was like an hour long. Then we're going to use this audio intelligence. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, so we have the ability to pass the transcript once it's transcribed through our audio intelligence features. So this can do things like sentiment analysis, summarization, intent detection, and topic detection. And this can be really useful for pulling out that valuable metadata, and it's all time stamped as well. So you can even build an overview of the podcast using those audio intelligence features.
Cool. And then you can also understand it on like a segment basis as well, right?
Yeah. So each part of the audio that comes through will pick up topics as they happen. So we can do major topics and minor topics as well.
Awesome. Oh, that's really interesting. I've just seen a question here in chat, and yes, please do use the chat. I will answer the question while encouraging you to use the chat. Will this demo be available on demand? Yes, like everything at Leap Week, it is all recorded. It will be available on Directus TV tomorrow. In fact, the workshop from yesterday with Twilio is already up in our brand new show called Enter the Workshop. So you will be able to watch this on demand, of course. So, but by being here live, you have access to the chat. So take advantage of it. I'll be monitoring it. You can ask either of us questions about Directus or Deepgram or what we're doing, and we'll be more than happy to answer in line. So we're going to transcribe a latest podcast episode. We are going to use the audio intelligence features that Deepgram offers. I'm going to struggle because Directus and Deepgram both start with D, so sometimes I might do this. I feel myself maybe doing it already. And then finally, we will use one of the newer Deepgram products, text-to-speech. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, so we recently released our text-to-speech. It's one of the lowest latency text-to-speeches on the market with high quality voices. So you can get very low latency text-to-speech generated at a very low price point as well.
Just to help me understand, because latency only, I suppose, matters. Well, it doesn't only matter, but it matters more when you're doing live, like real-time stuff. So you can use this real-time as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where we see a lot of
Interesting.
the demand in the market is for building real-time voice bots with sub-second latency. So with this text-to-speech, you can get about 250 milliseconds of latency for time to first byte.
Oh, excellent. We won't be using it real time today because obviously podcast episodes are already static hosted files, but that's, I suppose, where the latency matters. So you can do like true conversational voice bots, I suppose. Cool. So we're going to do all of that. Just to summarize how this is going to work, we are going to first build a flow that will take in a podcast URL. We will grab the latest podcast episode from that podcast feed. We will send that off to Deepgram to receive a transcript. Then we're going to send it off for text intelligence, so text-to-text API that Deepgram offers. We'll talk a little bit about why they're separate when they don't have to be. You can do those two steps together, but it will become clear as we go through the workshop. Then, armed with a summary of that podcast, we are going to send it back off to Deepgram to generate a short summary, I suppose, an audio bite, which we will then save back to the Directus project so you can go and listen to it at your leisure. Any questions in the chat? Any thoughts, Damien, before we kick off?
Yeah, if anybody wants to sign up for Deepgram, we give $200 in free credits as well. So you'll be able to transcribe about 750 hours of audio for free, essentially.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Really nice way to get started. And indeed, that is what we will be doing today. Okay, I think that means we are ready to kind of jump in and get started. And the very first thing we are going to do here is we are going to set up a Directus project running locally. Now, I will give you a very quick summary of what Directus is in case you're coming from the Deepgram world and you've not heard of Directus before. So Directus is a really cool backend that you can use as a developer to build your applications. You connect it to a database. We provide developer tooling and this really beautiful web application which you can use to interact with that data. And it's suitable for handing to non-developers as well, which is not very typical of backend tooling. So we're going to spin this up, and then we are specifically going to use Directus Automate, which is part of this application, in order to build this kind of multi-step flow, something that looks a bit like this, except each one will take on one of the steps we described in our project. This project will use some extensions that we built and published to the marketplace, which is available in all Directus projects. We can go and do that together. And then that very final step where we create a new audio file and save it back to our Directus project, we're going to build that extension together because it doesn't currently exist. So that's the kind of rundown of how this is going to shake out. So with that in mind, I have this empty directory here on my local machine. It's just this empty directory called live. Let's move into it here. And we're going to spin up a Directus project. So the first thing we're going to do is create a docker compose.yml file. And I do happen to have one here. This is the Docker Compose file for spinning up Directus locally with a SQLite database. There isn't kind of too much to talk about here. We'll use the latest version of Directus that has been published on Docker Hub. We have 3 volumes. So these are directories that exist inside of the Docker container that we are going to map to local directories. And you'll see exactly what these do in about a minute. We need some environment variables, a key and a secret. You should replace both with random values. For the sake of this workshop, I think replace with random value is random enough, so we'll leave that be. The initial admin email and password, which of course you can go change. The database client and being SQLite is just a file, so we're just telling it where that file will live. We have WebSockets enabled, so you could do like real-time subscriptions. It's part of my kind of default snippet that I have. We're not going to use that today. And then we're also turning on extensions auto reload, which is going to be really important for the developer experience of building our extension at the very end of this workshop. So with all of that done, we can just run docker compose up. Did I hit save? I did not. There we go. And so it's now going to go ahead and spin that up. And you'll notice immediately an uploads and extensions and a database folder. So they are the 3 volumes that are inside of the Docker container, but also mapped to a local volume. It did a whole bunch of like first time, seeding. And then we have Directus running right now on localhost 8055 with my admin email and password that we set in the Docker Compose. And that's it. That's us having set up Directus. This is the full fat version of Directus running here. It's the same version we host in Directus Cloud. And we can, with that, kind of jump straight in. So, Damien, I might just give you a quick tour of it, if that makes sense. We have a database. Yeah, we have a database. It's that SQLite database. In here, we can create tables in that database, and we can query them. We can interact with the data. Great. We also have users that we can create. We have a whole auth service. So immediately we have this admin user, but you can invite other users. Users in turn can have various permissions, which grant them access to do different actions on collection. So create, read, update, delete, and share. We also connect to your asset storage, or you can save files locally as well. So this will connect to an S3 bucket, an Azure storage, Backblaze, and various others. We are going to use this later to actually save the summary back from Deepgram. By default, if you don't say anything, it will be just local file storage, and it'll actually just get dumped here in this uploads folder right here in the sidebar. We have a little insights dashboard builder. We used that in yesterday's workshop. And then over here in settings, we have access to flows, which is the automation builder, which is what we're going to use today. I think the only other thing we want to do before we kick off is, let me just have a quick think here. The only other thing we want to do is our public role. So this represents all of the requests that are made that have no permissions, that are not authenticated. And I'm just going to give it the ability to read and write files. In the real, you shouldn't do this, but for the sake of this, it'll be fine. What's the worst that could happen? So this will allow us to read and write files without needing to authenticate with Directus. What else is needed? We need the extensions from the marketplace. So there are 3 extensions we need here. If I type in Deepgram, I built a few. I don't like the spinning wheel. There it is, Deepgram. So we have the AI transcription operation, and we have the AI text intelligence operation. We believe in making things nice and small and modular, so we have separated them, and each one's very simple. In reality, I think in reality, you could do the intelligence at the same time as the transcription, right?
Yeah, you can send a single request and you'll basically just enable those parameters and you'll get both back.
Great. As these are, don't know what's going on there. Although I've had issues with my internet all day, so I'm going to go out. I'd rather this was a bit slow than you not being able to hear or see what's going on. So we did the AI transcription, and then we had the AI text intelligence. So we'll just install both of those. So these were released last month as part of our Directus AI bundle of operations for our automation builder. And then there's one more that I created just to make our life a bit easier today, and it's this extension here, RSS to JSON. It will allow you to go off and get an RSS feed, and it will path it and turn it into a JSON object. And this will be really helpful because we obviously need to pass the RSS feed of a podcast. So we'll go ahead and install that too. There we go. We'll just give it a quick refresh as it is prompting us to do, and we're ready to rock on. So we're going to create a new flow. Podcast summarizer. Sure, I don't think summarizer is a word, so I don't know why I'm so hung up on it. And we can trigger this automation in one of 5 ways. We can do an event hook. So an event hook can be triggered whenever, or will be triggered whenever something happens in your database. So it could be a new item is created in the posts collection, or a new user is registered, or a new file is uploaded. We have webhooks, which takes an inbound HTTP request. So you can receive data from third-party services. In the world of Deepgram, how we actually use it here on Directus TV, our on-demand shows all have transcripts. Some of our shows are very long, so we use Deepgram's asynchronous callback mode. So it goes off and does work and then pings you once it's done. And so that would be a webhook trigger. You can run them based on time, schedules. You can have flows trigger other flows. So if you have complex, use cases, you can kind of bounce portions off into their own modularized automations and then return the data back up. And finally, manual. And this will add a button. This will add a button to the side of the data studio when you're in collections or item pages, and you can go and trigger it from there. We're going to use a webhook because I just want the ability to call it really quickly, and just making a quick curl request is probably going to be the easiest way to do it. I don't care about any of this because it really is just a quick trigger. So if I hit this URL, in fact, let's do that. If I open a new, let me just kill these two terminals. If I open a new terminal and just call this URL and refresh here, we'll see it's been triggered once in the logs. So I think that's going to be the quickest way of just constantly running it as we go to test it. Okay, any questions so far? Anyone in the chat? I raced through this. I got us to this point super, super quick. We scheduled an hour and a half in for this, and I think it won't take long at all. So unless questions are asked, so feel free. Not that you have to, not that you need questions. A question for you though, Damien. With Deepgram's callback mode, can you give some use cases for when that's useful? Because it's a really good, demonstration, I think, of the fact that you can trigger flows based on webhooks.
Yeah, a lot of customers use it because it allows their server to, get back to doing other tasks, right? So rather than waiting for the response, the more features you enable, the longer the request will take. So, adding summarization and topic detection, entity detection, it can go up into, the 30, 40-second range. And as the audio gets longer as well. But yeah, like by default, if you're just transcribing, you can transcribe an hour-long podcast in probably 10 seconds, right? So one of the other cool features is you can pass a URL to like an S3 bucket. So you can tell us, cool. Hey, when you're transcribing it, instead of me sending you the file, go pull it from an S3 bucket. And you can even tell us to put it back into an S3 bucket as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we have actually over in our docs, I've written a post before, a Deepgram post right here. Right, but that makes sense. It's to stop you having like hanging long connections open. Right, and that makes total sense. So what this does is it listens for any file upload. It verifies that it's an audio file, and then it will send the URL of your file directly to Deepgram, authenticated with your token. It has a transcript returned, and then you can save that straight back to the file. So it's placed right next to the file, which is really cool. It's a really straightforward automation here. And this also featured on, let me find it. This also featured on our Quick Connect series right here. So it's that same project, but over in video form. So if you're interested in kind of learning more about what's quite a common automation, I think, with Deepgram, you can see how to set that up. Okay. First thing we need to do then is we need to go ahead and get a podcast, like actually go get an RSS feed. I have loads of podcasts. I actually agonized over which to pick. So I picked Darknet Diaries. Have you heard of Darknet Diaries?
No, I haven't heard of it.
Fantastic podcast all about cybersecurity. Really, really, really good. I just listened to just listened to this latest episode here, Anom, like 2 days ago. It came out June 4th. It was so good. It was not what I expected. But yeah, 146 episodes of Darknet Diaries. And I'm going to say true podcast, because I think Spotify have started to screw with the definition of a podcast, is just an RSS feed. And they all follow exactly the same format. If it doesn't have an open RSS feed, it isn't actually a podcast. It's an appropriation of the term podcast. But the podcast is this kind of XML document, this RSS feed, and they all have, some metadata that, will be shown in your podcast apps. And then they have a number of items here. So this item here that I'm highlighting is a single episode. It's that one we just saw, Anom. And you'll notice here in the enclosure, there is this attribute called URL, and that contains a direct MP3 link. And that's how podcasts all work. And that's really handy because with Deepgram, you can send a binary file or you can send a URL. And podcasts have this URL just hanging out there. So our job is get the URL. I can take this whole feed URL and use our brand new, I built it yesterday, RSS to JSON operation here. And I'm going to call it feed. The fact I've called it feed will become clear in a moment. Why does this key matter when it has a name? Why does this key matter? We'll talk about that in just a moment. We'll stick the URL in there, save it, hit it again. And I think we configured this flow to actually return the data from the last step. So we are expecting to basically see it here. Yeah, there it is. The whole RSS feed, but turned to JSON. If we refresh here, we can also see it in our logs. There it is. So there it is. That's pretty cool. There's our item. Where is it? Here we are. There's our item array. And there is the MP3. Now, it does actually say in the docs of this extension that I built yesterday, if ever there's an attribute, you'll note it, you may remember it was an enclosure. In fact, I can show you. It was an enclosure tag with an attribute of URL. And somehow I had to map that to a JSON object. So the chosen method was to make it an object, and the attributes are just underscored. I think that's valid. So now we want to dig in and actually get that data. We want to get that URL. So we will create a new step here. And this one I will call latest, I guess. Latest. Because we just want to get the latest episode. This has all the episodes. And we're going to just run some JavaScript in here. Now, this kind of boilerplate here, is the zoom level okay?
Yeah, it looks okay.
Yeah, cool. Has this data property. And data is a big object, and properties in that object include the keys of all of the steps. So I can go and get the feed step by going data.feed, and that's that whole object that was returned. So if you name the keys, you can more easily pick specific values from all the way up what we call the data chain, and every operation adds a new object to the data chain. So we have data.feed here. Now, I happen to know, because I didn't want to sink too much time here, I know where the value of the URL is. It's in .rss, .channel, .items, .item, because that's an array, and we want the first item. That's the value of the episode. I suppose we'll just store that. And now that episode has a ton of data. How long is it? When was it published? What's the description? What's the title? What's the cover art? The MP3, obviously, and a whole bunch of additional metadata. It was huge. It was a really, really big object, actually. The ID, the pub date, the link to the website, the description formatted, the URL and data about the URL. Some data specifically for iTunes, the author, iTunes summary, so much. so much. Well, actually, not so much. That's the end of it. I reached the end, but it's significant. We don't need all of it. We only need some of it. So we're going to just start pulling out some values. So what we'll do is we'll grab the date. That feels like a viable thing to store. We'll turn that into a JavaScript date. What was it called? Pub date. Pub date. And I know that we want it in an ISO string. So that kind of standardizes it. Because I don't think it comes in an ISO string. No, it comes in whatever this archaic thing is. So that's the date. We want the title. That also feels legit. So episode.title. We could grab the description. There are a few variants of this description. Taking a look. Let's take a look. What's the difference? This one has HTML tags, P, and 2 break tags. This one does not. So this is the one we want here. The iTunes summary, iTunes : summary, which means we have to use this syntax to dig in there. And finally, the actual URL, of course, episode.enclosure underscore URL, because it was an attribute. Okay. Looks legit. Save that. Let's run it again. Nothing. Great. That's not what we want. What happened here? To ISO string is not a function. Oh, because it said to ISO sting as a typo. String. There it is. The date, the description, the title, the URL. Cool. So yeah, it's a pretty nice little automation builder here. Now we have the URL. I mean, strictly speaking, we didn't need that step, right? We could just crack on, but I like just reducing down that complex data structure into something quite known. So that we called this latest. We'll need that in this next step, which is actually going to be the AI transcription operation that we built and released. So there are some options here. The first thing we need is the Deepgram API key, which you can get from your Deepgram dashboard. We'll do that together in a moment. You need a full file URL, which we have. It's the MP3. You can provide a callback URL optionally, and then this will flip over into callback mode, which again stops long hanging, connections. But this will be fine for this. We allow you to enable diarization, which, do you know why it's called diarization? This isn't leading. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, it could be called speaker identification as well. But yeah, I think the research term for it is diarization. So it basically tells you who's speaking when you have a mono channel and multiple speakers. If you have multi-channel audio, you don't really need to diarize because each speaker's on a different channel. But yeah, a lot of people have a single channel, especially with a podcast. It's not multi-channel.
Yes, and thank you, Franzi. I'm glad I caught it really quickly. But yes, there was a missing R in ISO string. So you can optionally enable diarization, and then you can also add keywords. Talk to us about keywords. As someone who works for a word that sounds like directors, I'm very, very intimately familiar with this.
Yeah, so keywords allows you to kind of increase the probability that we would, pick up directus and directus, right? As a single word versus like direct us, right? So if you put in that keyword with the spelling and then you increase the intensifier, and the intensity is actually it's a exponential scale. So as you go up higher, it gets extremely strong. Value of 1 or 2 is pretty normal. If you were to put in a value of 1,000, nearly every word will start turning into directus. But that kind of gives you an idea of how you can leverage that feature.
Yeah. Interestingly, it's not direct us. It's always directors. Like, I am the director of the film.
Okay.
That's always like when it's wrong, that's how it gets it wrong. We don't need to use keywords for this. So first thing we'll need is a Deepgram API key. Here is our Deepgram console. Signed up for an account, and you can go make a new API key. You can give it a nice name here, so we can call this Leap Week Workshop. You can optionally set an expiration. I will do that. I will expire this after 1 hour, right? Because we won't be going for more than an hour, and then this key will just stop working. You can also add some tags, but this is the thing that's interesting. You can change the permissions of the key, which is nice. Yeah. Do you have any notes about this, or just, yeah, you can do that?
Yeah, like if you have certain needs, right? Sometimes you might want to generate keys, like more API keys with an API key.
Build an admin, like if you're creating this as a service, for example, you're using Deepgram in like cool. Yeah. That makes sense. You get an API key, which you probably shouldn't share, but mine disappears in an hour and a half, and it has a fixed amount of credit and no credit card. So do your worst. We'll pop the Deepgram API key in there. Next thing we want is the file URL. You can add dynamic values using mustache syntax, double squigglies on each side. The last step was called latest, and the value was URL. So that will resolve to the full URL that was inside of that enclosure. And I think we'll leave everything else. I think that's the shortest version. I'll call this transcription. Transcription. Sure. Hit save. No. Let's try it out. So now it's taking a little bit longer because it's not just making one HTTP request. We are waiting for it to happen. Now, by default, I happen to know because I built this extension, we do turn on a couple of features. So I'll wait for this to finish and then we'll talk about those features. Maybe taking a hot minute there. Has it? Oh, there we are. There we are. Boom. Look at that. Huge. Right. Before we look at the data structure that comes back, I will tell you that we are using Smart Format and we are using the Nova 2 model. So maybe let's talk briefly about each. Shall we start with the model?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the base model is our oldest model. So that was, from kind of 2018, 2019 era. It's an extremely performant model, but the accuracy is a lot lower. Some customers still opt to use it because it is just so compute efficient. And then we have our enhanced model, which added a bit more compute to it. But yeah, our Nova 2 model is the most accurate model that we have. And it's available now in 36 languages, and we're adding more languages every month.
Nice. And that is what we're using here in this operation. And then what Smart Format do? I think Smart Format basically checks a bunch of other boxes for us.
Yeah, so smart formatting is actually baked into the model. So the model itself, when it's transcribing, is generating the formatting. If you turn that off and you enable like punctuation and numerals and things like that, that will apply post-processing formatting, which tends to lose a little bit of the context. Because some, like the number 1 isn't always meant to be a number, right? Like if I am the one and only, you don't want the digit to come in there, right? So that's essentially what that's there for.
Fascinating. So we applied Smart Format, so we make that available. So you don't have the option to turn those off or change them. That's just what you get with this extension. Okay, let's look at what came back there. Big old payload. Now, just because this is I've gone into the big data structure that Deepgram returns, which, Damien, you've probably spotted that immediately. This is the first alternative is always returned. So I can just speed up I can speed run us here. So the first thing is this transcript, which, yeah, like you said, it's nice. It's formatted. Interesting. I didn't know it was baked into the model and that it's not post-processing, and that's the difference. I thought it was just a shortcut to checking a few other boxes, but it isn't. It actually does something different.
Yeah, and some customers will want digits but not punctuation, or punctuation and not digits. So having them split out as well allows them to pick and choose between the features.
Right. So we have reached the point where this is too Deepgram, Directus. This is too big for me to just scroll through and talk about. So what I'll do is I'll just look at the docs for this specific extension and we can talk about it. So this was the AI transcription operation. This is the data structure that's returned if it was a really short transcript. So we have the transcript. We saw that. We didn't actually manage to scroll to the end of it. Can you talk to us about the other objects that are, or the other properties that are returned?
Yeah, so the words array is going to give you the start and end times of each of the words, also the confidence that we have for that word. Like if you detect a very low confidence word, some people will actually choose to omit it, right? It could have just been, picked up from a cough or something like that. And yeah, if it's down at like 5%, it's usually probably going to be wrong, right? But for the most part, you'll see confidences in the high 90s. We also have the punctuated word, so you'll get the word as it was printed out without any punctuation or formatting.
What happened
And
there?
then what we apply to
They're not the same word.
might
Isn't
just
that
be a
weird?
typo.
Oh, it's a typo in my README. It's a typo in my README. Ignore me. I'll go and fix that another time.
Yeah, and you would have seen lowercase hi
Yeah,
and
yeah.
no full stop in
Whoops.
that case. Yeah.
And then there's also paragraphs, which is also interesting.
Yeah, so we can split it up by paragraphs. If you enable diarization, we'll also split it up by who said what as they said it.
Cool.
And you can do utterances as well, so that will give you kind of logical semantic breaks in speech as well. Yeah, and if you were to enable diarization in each word, you would get a speaker ID as well. So you would have like speaker 0, speaker 1, and whoever spoke the word.
Yeah, lovely. And we see here the transcript is there. It's formatted, but it adds these line breaks in. So, you can kind of print that. We get paragraphs, we get sentences, we get start ends for all of them. So it's really nice and flexible. Yeah, I see sentences could work quite nicely for putting captions on a screen, like a sentence at a time or something like that. Okay, so that's the data that comes back from that. I think for this, all we really care about is this top level transcript, but the rest of it does exist. Now, just a reminder, you can do audio intelligence within that single request if you're using the Deepgram API or SDK, but we've chosen to split them into two distinct operations so you can just have what you need, and each one can be a little more simple rather than being a kitchen sink of options. So let's crack on then. Let's go ahead and add the text intelligence right here. So I'll call this analyze, I think. Once again, Deepgram API key. I think I can't see it again. Oh wait, it's in the last one. We'll do that. We'll grab it out of here. There it is. There's the raw value, which again will expire by the time this is over. Right, AI text intelligence, analyze. Deepgram API key, and the text is going to be transcription, was the name of was the key of the last step, .transcript. Now, this is a point to actually introduce you to one of the only kind of changing values in the data chain. At any point, you can write last, and it will be the last operation. I hate this. As our educators, our lead educator, I think this lets you foot gun, because if you start rewiring your operations, this value is not always the same. That's why I'm personally a big fan of explicit naming of keys and explicit inclusion of keys, but last always exists. Another one that exists is the trigger, which will give you data from that very first step. So there's just a couple of conveniences there, but we will make this try. Go ahead.
Is there any way to see all the available step values or objects or explore them?
Yes, there's a number of ways. Now, debugging flows is an area we know needs improvement. I'm going to just save this. You can take a look over here, right? And you can look through the logs and you can go, right, well, this was the each step, and it was called latest, but you don't have the key immediately available. You can simply just log them. We have a logging step, which will add an extra operation. You can also just return it in the last step and it will return here. Or rather, I think when you configure the trigger, let's take a look. You can get all data back and that will return the entire object. So you have options. But no, there isn't a really nice way to do this right now.
Yeah, it might be a cool addition. I know when I use
agree.
like email syntax injection, there's like a little list and it lets me pick from them.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And this was actually the topic of, back to Directus TV we go, of one of our recent request reviews. What was it? It was the improvements to flows debugging. So we spoke about it for a whole hour with our community around what they'd like to see based on an open feature request. So maybe that's something we'll see in the not too distant future. All right, let's try this. Now, we are expecting to wait a moment for this because it's going to transcribe the whole hour. Then it's going to run the text intelligence. So I'll kick it off, but I am expecting to wait.
And are flows always triggered from an API request, or is there a way
No, there was 5 different triggers. So now we're a little bit deeper. I'll do this again because I think you're building more context around this. So the first is an event hook. So you can say, hey, whenever an item is created in this specific collection or these collections, trigger the flow. So you can do event-based hooks. You can either do it before the database transaction occurs, so you can validate, manipulate the inbound data before it gets committed, or perhaps stop it in its tracks, right, and fail out if something that isn't correct, or you can do it after the data has been committed. So that's the event hook. We have the webhook, which we are using for this just for speedy rerunning. You can run it on a schedule, so you can provide the 6-point cron syntax here and run it up to every minute. You can trigger it based on another flow. So one of the operations in the list was to run another flow. You can put data in and it will return data out. So you can modularize your flows a little. And then finally, manual. And I think the easiest way to look at manual is probably just a quick trip to the docs. The manual flow trigger, you pick a set of collections and it adds this button over here to the sidebar. So this sidebar, it requires you to check one or more items and hit the button, or you can do it from within an individual record, an individual item, and it will send the IDs of those items into the flow as part of the trigger. That did take a little while there. You can additionally add this confirmation dialog and collect per invocation values. So this could be useful for things like sending an email, right? So you type in a message, you hit go, you maybe pick some users or send a text message with Twilio, press a button and off it goes. So they're the 5 ways to trigger your flow. But we're just using the webhook, so I can just run it just by hitting up and enter here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what that big object looked like. We have the summary, which is nice. It's a nice length for an hour's worth of footage. Can you talk to us about the rest? That's the summary, but we've got more.
Yeah, so the topics, it's got a lot of predetermined topics that the model's capable of picking up. You also have the option to pass custom topics. So if you have a topic that's kind of nuanced, very unusual, you can add that in as well. And that's going to figure out like, okay, whereabouts in this transcript, right, based on the text in this case, whereabouts was it talking about WikiLeaks or a fake off or a scam or a spyware, and that's really useful because now you have the ability to actually jump to that position, right? So you could imagine if you wanted to find the area that was talking about WikiLeaks, you could just click a button and it would jump you to that segment in the actual transcript.
Yeah, exactly. Or you could build like a search, but you're not searching just the raw transcripts. You're searching for topics because that's more realistic to people's usage. That's really cool. This again is quite long, so let's find our way to the example I've written up here. So yes, we get the topics on a per segment basis. You get the intents. Let's talk about intents. And can we talk a bit about how intents are different to topics? Because I'm a little fuzzy on it.
Yeah, so topics can be all sorts of things. You're probably going to have, say 10x topics versus intents. An intent is really like if I'm making a phone call and I want to cancel my plan, or update my address, right? That might be one thing. But I may go off on a tangent and start talking about my holiday in Spain, and do you know what I mean? And that could be a topic. But the intent of the call really was to, achieve something. And the same can be said about a video, a podcast. So yeah, I'm interested what intents it actually brought back for that podcast.
Let's take a look. I might have to do the mother of all scrolls here.
You could try a Control F, maybe.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, you'd think I'd know that using a computer every day. What do we call it? Intent. Thank you for that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
explore Samsung Smart TV features. That's funny. They were talking about, because I just listened to this the other day. Basically, Samsung TVs had this feature built in where you could put it in like low power mode, where like it looks off but it's not. And so if you push mute 182 and then power, the TV appears to be off, but it isn't. And then if you basically run spyware on it and then put it in that mode, no one knows. So instead of needing to plant bugs, you could actually just use the Samsung Smart TV, which will record to the TV, and then you just go by and retrieve it later.
And you can see how useful this intent is, right? Like straight away, it got us to something very interesting, right? Yeah. So there's definitely going to be less intent.
Yeah, that's discuss Anom's features. That is what happened. Interesting. Okay, it might make a little less sense here, but in a call center context in particular, or an intent-driven voice, context, I totally get it. And then the final one was sentiments.
Yeah, so with sentiment, and it's pretty cool. I don't know if you have the playground up. There's a good visualization of the sentiment in there.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you scroll up and then you see just at the very top, next to summary, sentiment. So you can track the sentiment over time, right? Because we're giving you sentiment, at each sentence or utterance. And if you scroll down, you can see as the sentiment changes, it goes to see negative, negative, negative. So that kind of gives you an idea of what's happening throughout the show or the phone call.
Got it. But you might only need to know the average. So I think, if memory serves me right, there is also, I think it is literally called average. You get an average sentiment as well.
Yeah, and the average is going to tend towards neutral, right? Because the vast majority of text is kind of neutral, right? It's only going to be parts of the call go negative. So like if you see I don't know if you can search for positive, see how many results you get, and so what's that, 10, and then negative
69.
Yeah, and then neutral
81.
Okay, so it looked like it was kind of 50-50 on the neutral and negative, but yeah, just enough to bring it kind of back to that neutral.
Yeah. Well, it's just going to average the sentiment scores, which are between -1 and 1, I'm guessing, given that this is minus 0.15. Okay, so we now have a summary, and now it's time to go ahead and that summary was held in the output of that. I think it was called summary.text. Summary was an object. And now it's time to use the text-to-speech APIs. And to do that, we are going to build an extension, which I'm really excited about. Now, For those watching, this isn't intended to be a play along, so I'm going to go a little bit faster than I would running a hands-on workshop because this is going to be available tomorrow on Directus TV. I'm also going to turn this into a blog post sometime in the next couple of weeks, so you can follow step by step in written form if that's more your thing. So we're going to go into our extensions folder here and npx create Directus extend. Oh, this always gets me. Extension, direct. Yeah, sure. Always the latest version, please. And here are all of the extension types. You can create custom panels for Directus Insights, the dashboard builder, custom interfaces, which are form inputs for the editor. But we are going to create an operation for flows. And I will call this Deepgram TTS, text to speech. I'll just write it in JavaScript and auto-install dependencies. And given the speed of other things that have happened on my system during this session, I think we'll just be waiting a hot minute for that. But what we're going to do here is we're going to set up this operation, and we are going to use Deepgram's JavaScript SDK, which makes interacting with Aura, the text-to-speech service, just a lot easier. So while that's scaffolding, let's oh, it did it. It did it. So next time we wait, we'll take a look at Aura. So we're gonna jump in here. Right. Let's take a look inside of our new Deepgram TTS extension at the code. There are two files that matter. The first is app.js, and this describes all of the configuration. So this says what is shown on the card here on this kind of overview and what options are presented here and then fed into the backend. So the API key and the text and stuff like that. The app.js, yeah, will also do things like what icon is shown here, what text and description, stuff like that. And then there is the API.js, which runs server side and actually executes the the operation, and it will be here where we install and use the SDK.
That's really powerful that you can build the UI through that code and do all backend processing. A lot of ideas kind of coming to mind now that I see it.
Yeah, a lot with Directus in multiple ways. Yesterday we built. I'll actually not to, for those watching on demand. Sorry for kind of crossing streams here. You probably you may have already seen this. But if we take a look at Directus TV and just take a very quick look at yesterday's workshop, another thing you may not consider is, let me just mute it. You may not have considered is, we have this dashboard builder, and you might be thinking, oh, okay, it's all about just displaying insights, like a BI tool or whatever. But whoa, look at that quality there. I'll click back over here in a minute. Maybe just here. But this panel, you pick a user from a dropdown and hit call, and it would use the Twilio voice SDK to actually do a two-way phone call from your browser to the target, to the user's phone number. So yeah, really, really flexible. You can very much build a lot in it. Anyway, right, so we're going to create a custom operation. So first thing we're going to do here is we are going to change the ID. The ID has to be unique across all operations in your project. So it's quite typical that, people will prefix the name of their extension with their author name. I'm just going to call this one Deepgram TTS because I doubt there will be another one called that. And that has to be the same in both files. So also here, the ID. We'll call this one Deepgram TTS. What are we going to do for icon? We will use record voice over, I think is the one that I've used in the past for Deepgram. And then for description, generate text to speech, whatever. We don't need to sink too much time into that. It's just a little visual thing. Now what we need to do is we're going to pass in some text. So actually, I think we'll just leave that as it is. But we are also going to pick the model. So let's actually take this moment to pause. Could you talk to us about the models in Aura?
Yeah, in the playground, actually, you should be able to
Oh,
access them. We literally just added it the other day. So on the top, at the right-hand side, the very top right-hand.
oh, text to
Yeah,
speech.
there
There
you
it
go.
is. Didn't see that there. Oh, perfect. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, so you can type in any text you want here, and it will generate it. Yeah, and you can just hit play on one of the voices. Angus at the very top actually is my voice. So yeah, if you ever want
Is
to
it actually? I listened to it yesterday. That's so funny. So we have two here. You know what? Let's just, for sake of argument, we'll just pick the top two, Angus and Arcus. But they each have this model name, Aura Angus EN and Aura Arcus EN. So we're going to provide a way to do a drop down and just pick between them. And in theory, you would populate as many as you wish, or you would take away the choice and just pick one and not provide this option. But we can do that. So we have this text box in the option. Let's go and create a new one. So we will do field. This is what you name it. So I'll name it model, right? That's like the key that we saw. We're going to give it a visual name. So we'll capitalize that. That is ultimately just going to store a string. And then, meta, we get to provide some information in here. First thing we'll do is just the width. We'll make it full, which just means I'll go under it. You can make them half, but whatever. But the more important thing here is the interface or the form input. You can create custom interfaces, as we spoke about earlier, and the one we want is called select drop down, like so. This interface has some options. As you would probably expect, it's the choices. And each choice has a text and it has a value. And like I said, we will do two. So the text for the first one is Angus, and we can see here Aura Angus EN. Is that what it is? Yeah, Aura Angus EN. And Arcus was the second one. Aura Arcus EN. Nice. Now, the only other thing we'll do here is we'll just show it on that card. This is optional. This is just UI fodder to a degree, but we will. And sorry, it's over here in the overview. So we'll also bring in the model, and we will show that on the card as well. And you'll see what that does in just a moment.
And what would be the default if that wasn't populated, or is it just always?
It would just be an empty card. It would just be an absolutely empty card like this.
If the model wasn't selected.
Good question. I think it might default to the first. Don't know. You could probably set a default or handle the default over on the server side. If not selected, pick this. I think kind of similar approach to most drop downs that you could build. So let's run this. Let's go npm run dev. And that's going to build our extension, watch for changes, and rebuild it whenever there's a change. Over in our first terminal here, we see here extensions reloaded. If I hit save, it will rebuild the extension. Directus will see that I've rebuilt the extension has been rebuilt. Will it?
You might need to make a change rather than.
Yeah, that's what I was waiting on. Interesting. I might just quickly restart it and see if it needed just a one-time restart. And if that continues, then whatever, might just have to kick it up the bum. So that's rerunning now. So I'll just save that. There you go. Extensions reloaded. Okay, just needed one quick kick up the bum. So let's see what happens now. So we will add this new extension on the end. There it is, Deepgram TTS. There's the icon we picked. There's the text. There's the title. We pass in the text, which we know is analyze dot summary dot text. I think. So analyze.summary.text. Sure. And we pick the model, and there they are. So we'll pick your voice. That's quite funny. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. And we'll hit save. So, and you see there the model is shown on the front, and that's the text input that we put in. So we hit save. When this operation runs, the API side will run. So the first thing we'll do is we will go ahead and just pull the model in as well. So that'll just be the EN, Angus or Aura Angus EN. Let's do this. I'm really excited actually. Right, we are going to use the Deepgram SDK. So npm install at deepgram/SDK. Good. And we'll go ahead and initialize this. It's funny, when I was a developer advocate at Deepgram, I did this all the time. So import create client from from Deepgram SDK, and then you create an instance, Deepgram equals create client, and the API key has to go in here. Yeah, obviously I errored. Why did I even bother hitting save? We need to pass in the API key here. We don't really want to hard code it in our extension. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to add it here to our Docker compose file, which will bring it into the environment variables. So mostly because I've already forgotten it, let's grab that key again. Let's pop it in here. We'll call it Deepgram API key. There it is. We do need to restart our Docker container whenever we update the Docker compose file, because it just reads that once at load. And straight away in here, process.env.deepgram API key. One moment. These are fine. These are not errors. These are little warnings. Not a problem. It's just some of the way that some of the build of the Deepgram SDK, but it's not a bother at all. They are just warnings. And now it's time to actually build out the handler. So what happens? We press the button, it goes in. Now, what we're going to want to do here is ultimately we want to save a file to our Directus project. And we expose a bunch of services to your project, which you can use to interact directly with these kind of Directus primitives. Now, the first thing we want to do here is we want to go ahead and just add in here a second variable called context. And inside of here, const, there we go. Oh my God, const. We want services, and we also want get schema, which we'll need to initialize the service. Services is a list of all the services: the user service, the item service, the permission service, the role service. We only care about the files service. So we'll just pull that out just to make it easier. And then we'll go ahead and we will initialize a files service. So new file service. And in here, you have to pass in the schema of your project. And that, thankfully, is just returned in get schema. And I did just catch in the little tooltip there that needs to be awaited. And therefore, this needs to be async. Not there. That's an object. So that's us creating the file service. That means we now have an interface with which we can create a file in just a moment. Next, we're going to go ahead and use the Deepgram SDK to generate a stream of audio. And this was lovely, by the way. I was speaking to Luke, one of the DX engineers at Deepgram recently about this. And the fact that this SDK uses the native interface makes this next bit really, really nice. So what we want to do here is create, I'll call it response for now, I guess, or EG response maybe. Deepgram response. What we can do here is just use the initialized client here with our environment variable .speak .request. First argument here is the source, so we can just pass in the text. So you would, this is how you do it, but a shorthand, because the name of the property and the value is the same, you can just shorthand it there. And secondly, any options that we want to use. I might just create options as its own, just to keep it really clear. I might just do this above here and then feed it in. So what do we want to do here? I think all we really want to do is we want to pick the model. So same thing, we can use the shorthand. So that'll be Angus. And we're going to tell it what file format we want it to return. If memory serves me right, you can return quite a lot of audio formats from Deepgram, right?
Yeah, we support quite a few different formats. Yeah, if you want to play it back, typically MP3 or WAV. If you want to stream it, like to Twilio and things like that, you'd probably do like raw audio, linear 16 or
Yeah. That's cool. We'll do this because in just a moment we are going to need to know the file format. So I want to explicitly ask it for a file format so we know with confidence it's going to be an MP3. Then finally, oh, hang on. Let's pass this in. DG options. There we go. And finally is the file stream. I might call it DG stream, just again to be very explicit. We're going to await response.getStream. Stream. That's it. That is a DG response. That is now just a live stream of audio, which is fantastic. Because it is a file stream, we can pass it straight into the file service to upload it. Now, before we continue, we are also going to need a file name, right? We need to tell Directus when we create a file what we want the file name to be, at least as when you download it. And I think what we might want to do is actually collect that from the user up front. Like, hey, what file name do you want this to be? So let's go through the motions here of adding a new item here and just a new text box, right? And we'll call this one file name, I guess. Field name type. I think that's all we need. File name.
I think you need to change the name, right?
No. Oh yeah. Sure. That will stop us getting confused. But strictly speaking, you don't need to. So we have the file name. Great. We're not going to bother showing it on the overview, so it can just stay here. And then over on the API side, we just want to pull that in here. File name. Yeah. Cool. And just to make this consistent, I might just move this, and we can call this like request or something like that. Just to, again, kind of handle these the same way. So now we have the file name that we'll pass in. Let's save this. Let's just refresh this, make sure all of that works. The white screen stayed for just a moment longer than I would have liked it to. Look, there's a problem here, which tells me something went wrong. But I don't know what. Look, they've all gone a bit funny, which means I have caused a problem. Love that for me. Might just zoom out one step for the sake of scanning a larger surface of code. File name. I could have broken at any of those points. We haven't refreshed this in a while. Thought there. And these are, let me scan this because they were just, these are just warnings. There. Oh, no, that's still the warning. Interesting. Let's look over here again. We passed in the create client. Let's just save ourselves just a moment of effort and just figure out if it's in here, first of all. It was. Okay. That at least helps somewhat. Let's Was it maybe the fact I've called it request? Request, no, that's fine. Okay. I mean, this is a top tier debugging. This. Okay, it's something down here. Okay. I mean, okay. Whatevs.
Yeah, so there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, let me just make sure the extension reloads. Fine. No bloody problem. Nothing happened here. Right. Let's open this one up, and now there's a file name, right? So I suppose we can put in a dynamic value here and call it latest, which was the latest episode, dot. I think we called it title. I'll save it, and then I'll just look back. Latest. Yeah, we called it title. So that'll be the title. So that's a dynamic value, which is nice. So that gets passed in as a file name. We get the stream, and all we need to do now is upload it to Directus. And the way we do that is, let's do the same thing again. We'll call it Directus options, just to again be really explicit. We need 3 things I think are mandatory here, or it won't work. The first thing is the file name download. So whenever you download the file from Directus, this is the file name that it will have. And we've already established, so that's going to be file name. Oh, .mp3, I suppose. I'm not sure if that's needed, but I'm going to do it anyway. It needs a MIME type. We just call it type here. We already know that's an MP3. I know the standard format for MIME types is this, audio slash. And again, that's why we specifically requested a file format. It doesn't really matter which one it was. And where is it going? This matters because you can connect more than one asset storage to Directus. By default, it will use local storage, which is just this kind of link to this uploads folder, but you can connect it to an S3 bucket, an Azure blob storage, and many more. So we're just telling it, hey, this is where we want the storage.
Should that meme type be MPEG rather than MP3?
No, I think it's this. Okay. If I cast my mind back, I think that's right. Don't know. We'll find out in a couple of minutes. That'll be our first point of debugging. And then the final thing we'll do, although it is optional, is we will actually set the title of the new file. So this is the visual labeled title, where the other one is what happens when you download it. That isn't strictly needed, but we'll do that. Then what we'll do is we'll call it Directus file, I guess. The new file is we will use our file service. We will upload one. And the first value is going to be a stream. Fortunately, Deepgram just returns a stream, so we can dump that in there. And the second one is the Directus options. What is returned from upload one is the new primary key of the new file that's being created. So we will just return Directus file. That's the whole thing. That's the whole operation. Before I get all excited and describe everything that's happened, let's make sure it works, because it might not. Right, nothing seems to have gone wrong here. We have a file name set, so let's trigger this one more time, and I am expecting to have to wait now because we are doing all of these steps back to back. I'm expecting to have to wait maybe 30-ish, 40-ish seconds, but we'll see. It's an hour of audio. So while that's happening, let's recap what's happening. We're going and grabbing the RSS feed and converting it to JSON with this custom extension that you can download for free in the marketplace. We just, traverse that big object that's returned to just get the latest item. We didn't end up doing anything with the date, actually, now I think about it, or the description. We transcribe it using the AI transcription endpoint, and then run text intelligence. Both of these are Deepgram to receive the summary. And then this custom built extension we just built does text to speech. You pass in some text, you pick a model from the dropdown. We just picked the first two out the list, Arcus and Angus, and you give it the file name for the original file, for the new file. And as you see here, what was returned was a string, which means there wasn't an error, which means there is our 42-second summary. Let me listen to your voice. I don't think this will come through. It's you. It's so you. That's so funny. So did people at Deepgram just get propositioned to like give their voices up?
6 of the 12 voices are Deepgrammers, and then the other 6 are voice actors.
It's really funny. But there's your little summary. There's your summary. That's so freaking cool. So let's talk about the code, and then we'll talk about what more you could do with this, right? So we grab the data that was actually, provided by the operation. We grab the file service and the get schema function, and we initialize a new file service. That allows us to interact directly with the Directus files collection. These 3 lines is all that's needed, and strictly speaking, this object could go in here. So 2 lines is all that's needed to request a text-to-speech operation, I suppose, from Deepgram. That's all that's needed, and it returns a stream of data. Then we, configure all of our options for our new file we're about to create, and we upload the file by just providing the stream directly, providing the options, and that returns the primary key, which we return. That's the whole thing. Do you have any questions in the chat? Who have been remarkably quiet, by the way. I hope you've enjoyed. Damien, do you have any questions, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just amazed at how easy that was. Like less than 30 lines of code, and it's all hooked up and it works. And a lot of that code is verbose code as well, right? Like it's trying to be expanded. So
absolutely,
yeah, really easy, and yeah, being able to pass that stream straight into the file
was very useful. Great. It was very, very useful indeed. So what more could you do with this? Well, the obvious kind of first step is that load more data is returned from Deepgram. So you can do more with that. Why we could save the description directly to the file if we wanted. We can provide, we can maybe tag it with topics. We could do whatever we want here. It's completely up to us. You could also run further automations, either as part of the same flow or a separate flow. It's all good that, a new podcast has been transcribed, but do we know? Maybe we send an alert, we send an email or a notification to the user, which, if we take a look here, there is a send email operation right here. So you could tell them that there's a new summary and maybe directly link them to the Directus files MP3. Because everything in Directus, if we take a look at this new file here, it has this ID, and you can just go to localhost 8055/assets/that, and there is our MP3. So you could link them directly to it if you fancied. Another thing is that, this was a slightly conceited example in that we had to manually run it. But you could run you could use a cron here. You could use a cron, grab the feed and say, hey, has there been anything new in the last 24 hours since I last ran? Okay, now go and transcribe the latest episode. So you could run this on a schedule, make it like a daily roll-up of new shows, new episodes that you could listen to.
One other idea is, like, obviously this was audio to begin with, and we kind of compressed it and we created a summary that became audio. But maybe there's a cool blog that you follow, but you may not have the chance to read the blog, but you'd like to listen to it, right? Maybe in the car. So you could take a blog, turn it into an audiobook very easily, or you could even summarize it, right, and play it out. I had a pretty interesting idea of like a real-time radio station that's basically tailored to exactly what you like, right? So you could have maybe archive research papers being fed in, and then it's giving you kind of the updates in real time.
Oh, pretend I didn't see that. I remember, I'm not sure if it will still be live. Yeah, here it is. This was a post I wrote The date's wrong because I worked here at that point. But what this did, it used Node.js and it literally live transcribed a radio station. I fed it in BBC Radio 4 and it would live transcribe it, which was super cool. Super, super cool.
Yeah, so now you can even do the reverse.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Awesome. There's so much scope for this, based on more complex triggers, more logic in the middle. Like I said, this could be a cron instead of a trigger. So many options. But I think that is just about our time, and we have 2 more minutes. So yeah, thank you so much for indulging me and getting involved in this and sharing your insights. I learned actually quite a lot during that, especially the smart format being part of the model itself. Fascinating. Not what I thought.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is super interesting, and I'm kind of amazed that you were able to build all this from scratch, in the length of time that we're chatting here. And yeah, it really just shows what's possible with Directus. So I might be building a few little flows with it myself.
That's how we get you. That's how we get you. And you can run it locally, right? And it's the full fat thing. It's not like a less good version. Like it's the full thing. It's what we host. I will say that. I need to add it to this. I think it's still in a PR actually. I don't think we merged it in yet. But the RSS to JSON operation, I will show it because it is also really light. I just didn't want to have to do it now because it kind of wasn't the point. We take in the URL as you saw, and all we do here is that all the code for this operation is here. That's it. That's the whole thing, the whole operation. We import a library called XML parser. We go off and get the RSS feed, and assuming everything was good, we just pass it, the attribute name prefix underscore, and then we return the pass data. So that whole operation, that first one, was this code. We could have built it live. I just didn't think it was going to be that interesting. Thank you so much, folks in the chat, for your kind words. I'm glad we made your life easier. I like lots of claps. Yes, there are lots of use cases, both for Directus and Deepgram, and the two together. And I completely echo Jonathan's sentiment. Welcome to the Directus community. We're very happy to have you. Great. And with that, we are at time. So have a wonderful rest of your week, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week, Damien. And tomorrow, just a reminder that there is one more event this Leap Week, and it is this community networking social. It is using the one and only platform I have ever done networking on that doesn't absolutely suck. So if you're interested in meeting other people who are interested or use or involved in Directus in some way, shape, or form, drop by. If you go to leapweek.dev, it will be localized to your time zone. But here in Berlin, in Central European, it is at 4 p.m. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you at that tomorrow. Damien, anything else you want to share just before we hit end?
No, thanks very much, everybody, for joining. And yeah, really interesting possibilities this is opening up.
Excellent. Right, with that, have a good rest of your day, nerds. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.